Kimberly Barker watched the real estate agent hammer the sold sign into the front yard of Blue Crest Cottage, the vacation home that had been in my family for nearly 30 years. A home where laughter once echoed through pine-paneled rooms, where grandchildren tracked sand across wooden floors, where memories were layered as thick as the coats of paint on the porch railings. My vacation home. At least it had been until today. "Congratulations, Mrs. Barker," the agent said, extending her hand. "The new owners are thrilled. They're planning to move in next month, just in time for summer." I shook her hand, ignoring the slight tremor in my own. At 63, certain betrayals cut deeper than others, and my daughter Amanda's words still rang in my ears 3 weeks later. "Mom, we've been thinking, maybe it's time to find someone else to watch the kids. You're just getting a bit slow. We need someone who can keep up with them." Slow. The word had fallen between us like a stone, creating ripples that would eventually capsize our entire relationship. 10 years I'd given them. 10 years of school pickups and afternoon snacks, of science projects and soccer practice, of being the foundation that allowed Amanda and her husband Paul to build their perfect careers. And now, at 63, still active, still independent, still perfectly capable, I was being discarded. Too slow. The agent handed me a folder containing the closing documents. Everything went smoothly. "The funds should be in your account by end of business tomorrow." "Thank you, Diane." I took the folder, my fingers lingering on its edge. The furniture and everything else? As discussed, the new owners purchased it fully furnished, except for your personal items. They're particularly excited about that antique dining set. The dining set where 3 generations of my family had gathered every summer. Where Amanda had announced her first pregnancy. Where my late husband Robert had carved his initials underneath one corner when we first bought the place. "I hope they enjoy it," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded despite the storm brewing inside me. As Diane drove away, I took one last walk through the empty house, empty of people and of the personal items I'd already packed, but still filled with furniture, with dishes, with the trappings of a family's summer legacy. In the kitchen, I ran my fingers along the countertop where I'd taught my grandchildren, 7-year-old twins Lily and Lucas, to roll out cookie dough. In the living room, I paused by the stone fireplace where Robert and I had spent countless evenings planning our future. On the back deck, I stood where we'd all gathered to watch 4th of July fireworks over the lake. Every board, every nail, every painted surface held memories that Amanda and her family took for granted. The cottage had been their guaranteed summer retreat, their escape from the heat and hustle of city life, their birthright, or so they thought. But Amanda had forgotten something crucial. Blue Crest Cottage had always been in my name alone. Robert had insisted on it when we purchased it, wanting to make sure I'd have something that was exclusively mine if anything ever happened to him. After his death 5 years ago, I'd never seen any reason to change the arrangement, especially since I handled all the maintenance, taxes, and upkeep without complaint or contribution from Amanda. It was an oversight that would now teach my daughter the most expensive lesson of her life. I took one final glance at the lake shimmering beyond the trees before locking the door for the last time. In my car, I checked my phone to find 3 missed calls from Amanda. Predictable. It was the first week of May, which meant she would be starting her annual ritual of planning their 3-week summer vacation at the cottage. She didn't yet know there would be no vacation this year. Or ever again. I decided to let her wait a bit longer as I pulled away from Blue Crest Cottage, the place I'd actually named Karma when signing the closing papers. Because sometimes karma doesn't wait for another lifetime. Sometimes it arrives with a sold sign and a cashier's check. 3 weeks earlier, I'd arrived at Amanda and Paul's suburban colonial precisely at 3:15 p.m., as I had every Monday through Friday for the past decade. My silver Volvo, a safe, practical car Robert had insisted I buy after his diagnosis, pulled into the circular driveway next to Amanda's gleaming Range Rover and Paul's never-dirty Tesla. The twins would be finishing school soon, and I was there for the usual pickup, just as dependable as the turning of seasons. I had a container of homemade chocolate chip cookies on the passenger seat, and plans to help them with their history diorama project due that Friday. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, patting my silver bob into place and dabbing at a smudge of lipstick. Not that appearances had ever mattered much to me, but Amanda had become increasingly fixated on them as she climbed the corporate ladder at her marketing firm. My comfortable slacks and cardigan wouldn't win any fashion awards, but they were perfect for an afternoon of childcare and crafting. To my surprise, Amanda's car was in the driveway. She rarely worked from home, and never on Mondays. Something felt off as I walked to the front door, my knees protesting slightly after the morning's water aerobics class. I brushed away the discomfort, just the lingering effects of an active life, not the creeping specter of age that Amanda seemed increasingly concerned about. I used my key to open the front door, calling out as I always did. "Hello? Anyone home?" "In the kitchen, Mom." Amanda's voice carried a note I couldn't quite identify. I found her sitting at the kitchen island with a young woman I'd never seen before. She couldn't have been more than 25, with a high ponytail and the kind of effortless athleisure where that cost more than it appeared to. "Oh, I didn't realize you had company," I said, setting the cookies on the counter. "Should I come back later for the twins?" Amanda and the young woman exchanged glances. "Mom, this is Brittany. She's going to be helping us with the kids." Something cold settled in my stomach. Helping with what, exactly? Amanda stood, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her perfectly pressed slacks. "Maybe we should talk privately." She nodded to Brittany, who took the cue and slipped out of the kitchen with practiced discretion. "What's going on, Amanda?" I asked once we were alone. My daughter took a deep breath, the kind that precedes speeches she'd rehearsed. I'd seen this before, when she told her father and me she was dropping out of law school to pursue marketing, when she announced she was postponing having children for her career, when she explained why they couldn't visit Robert in his final weeks because of an important client meeting. "Mom, you know how much we appreciate everything you've done for us. The kids adore you, and you've been a lifesaver these past 10 years. Present tense shifting to past tense. I felt my spine stiffen. But they're getting more active now. They've joined the swim team, Lucas is starting travel soccer, Lily has her dance competitions. It's a lot of running around. I've managed their schedules just fine," I said, a defensive edge creeping into my voice. "I've never missed a pickup or an activity." Amanda sighed, looking everywhere but at me. "It's not just about making it on time, Mom. It's about energy, being able to keep up." "I keep up just fine." "Do you?" "Because last month at Lily's recital, you had to sit down halfway through helping the girls with their costumes. And remember Lucas's birthday party? You were exhausted after an hour at the trampoline park." "I had a cold during the recital," I reminded her. "And anyone would be tired watching 27-year-olds bounce for hours." Amanda finally met my eyes. "Mom, we've been thinking, maybe it's time to find someone else to watch the kids. You're just getting a bit slow. We need someone who can keep up with them." There it was, the word that would change everything. "Slow," I repeated, the syllable bitter on my tongue. "I didn't mean it like that," Amanda backpedaled, though of course she had. "Just that someone younger might have more stamina. Brittany was a collegiate athlete, she's CPR certified, and she has a degree in childhood education. And I'm just old, tired grandma who can't keep up anymore. Mom, please don't make this difficult. You know we love you. This is just better for everyone." "Better for whom, exactly?" "For you and Paul, who've had free, loving childcare for a decade? For the twins, who are about to lose the stability of having their grandmother in their daily lives? Or just for you, Amanda, Because my slowness has become an inconvenience to your perfectly curated life? Amanda's cheeks flushed. That's not fair. We're thinking of you too. You should be enjoying your retirement, not chasing after kids. Caring for Lily and Lucas has been the joy of my retirement, I said quietly. But clearly you've made your decision. When is this change happening? Brittany can start next Monday. We thought maybe you'd want to join for the first week to help with the transition. 1 week. After 10 years, I was being given 1 week to say goodbye to my daily routine with my grandchildren. 1 week to explain to them why Grandma wouldn't be picking them up anymore, wouldn't be making after-school snacks, wouldn't be there to listen to their stories and help with homework. That won't be necessary, I said, my voice distant even to my own ears. I'm sure Brittany is perfectly capable of figuring things out. If you'll excuse me, I should go. Mom, don't be like that, Amanda called as I turned to leave. The kids will still see you all the time. And there's always the summer at the cottage. The cottage. The one she assumed would always be available to them. The one they used for 3 guaranteed weeks every summer. The one they treated as their entitled second home without contributing a dime to its upkeep. I paused at the doorway. Yes, there's always the summer. It wasn't until I was safely in my car, driving away from Amanda's perfect house with its perfect lawn, that I allowed the tears to fall. Not tears of sadness, though there was plenty to mourn. These were tears of anger, of indignation, of awakening. For 10 years, I had structured my retirement around my daughter's needs. For 10 years, I had been the reliable support system that allowed her professional ascent. For 10 years, I had given without complaint, without recognition, without so much as a thank you most days. And now I was too slow, past my expiration date, a liability rather than an asset. As I drove, a plan began to form. A plan that would remind my daughter of the value of what she had so carelessly discarded. A plan that would teach her there are consequences to treating people as disposable. Bluecrest Cottage would be at the center of it all. The vacation home that Amanda and her family took for granted would become the instrument of my most devastating lesson. By the time I arrived at my modest ranch-style home, the one Robert and I had downsized to after his diagnosis, my tears had dried and my resolve had hardened. I went straight to my office and pulled out the file containing the deed and insurance papers for Bluecrest Cottage. Then I picked up the phone and called Diane Richards, a realtor I'd met at my water aerobics class who specialized in lakefront properties. Diane? It's Kimberly Barker. Remember how you mentioned you had clients looking for a place exactly like my summer cottage? I've decided it's time to sell. I didn't return Amanda's calls that evening, nor the following day. Let her wonder. Let her feel a fraction of the uncertainty she'd introduced into my life by dismissing me from my grandchildren's daily routine. Instead, I spent the time going through old photo albums, reminiscing about summers at Bluecrest Cottage. One picture in particular caught my attention, Robert holding 3-year-old Amanda on his shoulders as they stood on the dock, both squinting into the sun, matching smiles revealing the gap where Amanda had recently lost her first tooth. The memory carried me back 25 years to the summer we first discovered the cottage. July 1999. Are you sure, Robert? It needs a lot of work. I stood in the center of what would eventually become our living room, eyeing the water stains on the ceiling and the dated wood paneling. Robert ran his hand along the stone fireplace, the one feature of the cottage that was in perfect condition. Think about it, Kim. Lake access, 3 bedrooms, that incredible view. So, what if it needs some TLC? That just means we can make it exactly what we want. It's a major project, I cautioned, though I was already mentally selecting paint colors for the kitchen. And it's a lot of money. My bonus should cover the down payment, he said, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. And think about what it would mean for Amanda. Every kid should have a summer place to make memories. Our daughter chose that moment to burst through the back door, her 12-year-old energy filling the empty space.
Dad.
There's a family of ducks on the lake, and I found this cool rock shaped like a heart. She thrust a smooth stone into Robert's hand, her eyes bright with excitement. It's perfect, right? Say we can get it, please, she begged. Robert looked at me, one eyebrow raised in silent question. Well, I sighed, unable to resist their matching expressions of hope. I suppose we could make it work. Amanda shrieked with joy and threw her arms around me. It's going to be the best place ever. Can we paint my room blue? Like the lake? And can I bring my friends here? And can we get a canoe? Whoa, slow down, Robert laughed. First, we have to buy it. Then we can talk about canoes. Later that night, after Amanda had finally fallen asleep in what would become her bedroom, Robert and I sat on the decrepit back deck, sharing a bottle of wine as we watched the moonlight on the water. I've been thinking, he said, his voice thoughtful. When we buy this place, we should put it in your name only.
Why?
I asked, surprised. Everything we owned was jointly titled. Our primary home, our cars, our investments. Because you're the one who'll turn it into a home, he said simply. You've got the vision for it. And he hesitated, swirling the wine in his glass. If anything ever happens to me, I want you to have something that's exclusively yours. Something no one can take from you. Don't talk like that, I protested. Nothing's going to happen to you. Robert smiled, but there was a seriousness in his eyes I didn't fully understand at the time. Probably not. But humor me on this, okay? This place will be yours. Your sanctuary. 2 weeks later, we signed the papers. Kimberly Barker. The deed read. Sole owner. At the time, it had seemed like an unimportant detail. The memory faded, replaced by the reality of my empty house. Robert had been gone 5 years now, taken by the pancreatic cancer that had crept up on us with devastating swiftness. But his foresight had remained. Blue Crest Cottage was mine alone. My sanctuary. My asset. And now, my instrument of justice. My cell phone rang again, Amanda's number flashing on the screen for the 4th time that day. This time, I answered. Hello, Amanda.
Mom.
Finally, her voice carried the familiar note of exasperation she reserved for when things weren't going according to her schedule. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days. Are you okay? I'm fine, I replied, my tone neutrally pleasant. Just been busy. Well, I wanted to talk to you about the summer. We're thinking of doing the last 3 weeks of July at the cottage this year instead of August. Paul's work schedule changed, and it would be better for... Actually, I interrupted smoothly. I wanted to talk to you about the cottage too. I'm making some changes this year. Changes? What kind of changes? Amanda's voice sharpened with suspicion. I'm not sure yet, I lied. I'm just reassessing things. Now that I won't be watching the twins anymore, I'm thinking about how I want to spend my time. Mom, I told you you'll still see the kids all the time. And there's the cottage in the summer. Yes, well, that's what I'm reassessing. I'll let you know once I've made some decisions. What does that mean? We always go to the cottage in the summer. We've already promised the kids. I have to go, Amanda. I have an appointment. We'll talk soon. I ended the call before she could protest further, a small smile playing at my lips. The seed of doubt had been planted. Now to let it grow. Over the next few days, I met with Diane, had the cottage appraised, at a value that nearly took my breath away. Waterfront property had skyrocketed since we purchased it, and listed it at a price that would ensure quick interest but still maximize my return. As anticipated, offers came in immediately. The real estate market for vacation properties was hot, and Blue Crest Cottage, with its private waterfront and charming renovations, all completed by Robert and me over the years, was especially desirable. Within a week, I had 3 competing offers over asking price. Throughout this process, Amanda continued to call and text, her messages growing increasingly concerned about my cryptic comments regarding the cottage. I maintained a deliberate vagueness, neither confirming her family's usual summer plans nor explicitly telling her about the sale. Let her anxiety build. Let her feel what it was like to have certainty stripped away. When I finally accepted an all-cash offer with a request for expedited closing, I felt a momentary pang of doubt. Was I taking this too far? Was my hurt pride worth the pain this would cause my grandchildren? But then I remembered Amanda's casual cruelty, the easy way she had discarded a decade of my dedication with a single word: slow. I thought of how I'd structured my entire retirement around her family's needs, only to be replaced the moment I showed the slightest sign of the age I'd earned through decades of giving. I recalled how they used the cottage every summer without offering so much as a contribution to the property taxes or maintenance costs. No, this wasn't too far. This was exactly the wake-up call my entitled daughter needed. And as for the twins, they were young. They would have other vacations, other summers. The lesson their mother was about to learn would ultimately benefit them too. The day before closing, Amanda called again. This time, her voice had a panicked edge. "Mom, I need to know what's happening with the cottage. I'm trying to schedule our vacation time at work, and the kids keep asking about swimming in the lake. What am I supposed to tell them?" I took a deep breath. The time for vagueness had passed. Tell them they won't be swimming in that lake this year, Amanda. Or any year. I've sold the cottage. The silence that followed was so complete, I thought for a moment the call had dropped. "You what?" Her voice, when it returned, was barely a whisper. "I sold Blue Crest Cottage. The new owners take possession tomorrow." You can't do that. That cottage is our family vacation home. The kids have spent every summer there their whole lives. The cottage was my property, I said calmly. Mine to keep or to sell as I see fit. But why? Why would you do this without even talking to us? We had plans. Plans change, Amanda. Sometimes suddenly, and without our input. I believe you taught me that lesson quite effectively when you replaced me with Brittany. Another silence, this one charged with comprehension. Is that what this is about? You're punishing us because we hired help with the kids.
No, Amanda.
I'm not punishing anyone. I'm simply making decisions about my property and my time, just as you've made decisions about yours. I was apparently too slow to care for the twins anymore, so I've decided to eliminate the burden of maintaining a vacation property I seldom use. Mom, we didn't mean, she stopped, struggling to find words that would undo what couldn't be undone. Look, if this is about Brittany, we can reconsider. The kids miss you. They keep asking when you're coming back. The manipulation was so transparent, it would have been comical if it weren't so insulting. No need to reconsider, Amanda. Brittany seems perfectly qualified. And please don't use the children as bargaining chips. It's beneath you. This is insane, she hissed, anger now replacing shock. You're selling a family heirloom out of spite. Blue Crest Cottage was never a family heirloom. I corrected her. It was a vacation home that I owned and maintained, which I generously allowed you to use, without contribution. And now I've sold it to a lovely young family who will create their own memories there. Dad would be ashamed of you, she spat, reaching for the cruelest weapon in her arsenal. I laughed, genuinely amused by how little she understood her father. Actually, Amanda, the cottage was in my name alone because your father insisted on it. He wanted me to have something that was exclusively mine, something no one could take from me. Those were his exact words. I don't believe you. Believe what you like. The deed is a matter of public record. You'll regret this, she warned, her voice cold. When you're old and alone, and you've driven away your family with your bitterness, you'll regret it. Perhaps, I acknowledged. But I suspect I'll regret having wasted 10 years of my retirement providing free childcare to someone who considered me disposable much more. I ended the call then, my hands shaking slightly despite my calm words. It was done. The bridge was burned. Now to see what would rise from the ashes. The funds from the sale hit my account the day after closing, a sum substantial enough to make me catch my breath when I checked my balance. I'd known intellectually what the cottage was worth, but seeing the actual number on my screen made the reality of what I'd done sink in. I'd just sold my family's summer home out of revenge. The place where Amanda had learned to swim, where the twins had taken their first steps on a beach, where Robert and I had spent our last vacation before his diagnosis. All gone, transformed into a number in my bank account. For a moment, doubt crept in. Had I gone too far? Was my wounded pride worth this permanent severance of family history? But as quickly as the doubt appeared, I pushed it away. This wasn't just about pride. It was about respect, or rather, the lack of it. About being valued for more than just the free services I provided. About teaching my daughter that people have breaking points, and she had pushed me past mine. I hadn't heard from Amanda since our confrontation the day before closing. No calls, no texts, no emotional visits to my door. Just silence, which told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in her priorities once I was no longer useful to her plans. That afternoon, I had lunch with my friend Helen, one of the few people who knew what I'd done. We sat at our favorite cafe, the spring sunshine warming the patio as I recounted the details of the sale and Amanda's reaction. "Well," Helen said when I finished, stirring her iced tea thoughtfully, "it's certainly dramatic. But I can't say I blame you. 10 years of childcare without so much as a thank you, and then she replaces you like you're a worn-out appliance? I might have done the same." "Really?" I asked, seeking validation I didn't realize I needed. "You don't think it was too extreme?" Helen considered this, her eyes, crinkled at the corners from decades of laughter, studying me carefully. "It's extreme, sure. But sometimes extreme is what's needed to wake people up. Amanda has taken you for granted for years, Kim. Not just with the childcare, but with everything. Remember when Robert was sick? How rarely she visited. How she always had some excuse." I nodded, remembering all too well the empty chair beside mine during those endless hours in the hospital. "You've spent your whole life accommodating her," Helen continued. "Moving heaven and earth to fit into her schedule, her plans, her life. Maybe it's time she learned what it feels like when you stop doing that." "That's what I thought," I admitted. "But now that it's done, I keep thinking about the twins. They didn't do anything wrong, but they're losing their summer home because of my actions." "The twins will have other vacations," Helen said firmly. "And if Amanda really wants them to have a lake experience, she can rent a place. Heaven knows she and Paul can afford it with their fancy careers that you made possible." Her words reassured me, but the undercurrent of doubt persisted. I changed the subject, asking about Helen's granddaughter's college search, and we passed the rest of lunch in easier conversation. That evening, as I was preparing a simple dinner for one, still an adjustment after decades of cooking for a family, my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera I'd installed after Robert's death, a precaution for a woman living alone. Paul stood on my porch, looking uncomfortable in his business suit, clearly having come straight from work. I hesitated, then opened the door. "Paul." I greeted him neutrally. "This is unexpected."
"Kimberly," he nodded.
"May I come in? I think we need to talk." I stepped aside, allowing him into the living room. Paul had always been the more diplomatic half of his marriage to Amanda. Where she was blunt and sometimes tactless, he was measured and strategic. If they were deploying him as their emissary, it meant they were taking this situation seriously. "Can I offer you something to drink?" I asked, falling back on manners to fill the awkward silence. "No, thank you. I won't stay long." He remained standing, his tall frame tense. Amanda told me about your conversation. About the cottage. I assumed she would. She's devastated, Kimberly. We all are. I folded my arms. I'm sure it's inconvenient to have your summer plans disrupted. Paul winced. It's more than inconvenient. That place meant something to all of us. The twins are crushed. They don't understand why they can't go to Grandma's lake house anymore. The mention of my grandchildren's distress hit its mark, but I kept my expression neutral. I'm sorry they're upset. But children adapt quickly. I'm sure you and Amanda will find somewhere equally nice for your vacation. This isn't about finding another vacation spot, Paul said, frustration edging into his voice. It's about family history, traditions,
Continuity.
those things matter, especially to kids. They certainly do, I agreed. Perhaps Amanda should have considered that before deciding I was too slow to be part of the twins' daily lives. Paul had the grace to look ashamed. That was poorly handled. I told Amanda that at the time. Did you? And yet you went ahead with hiring Brittany anyway. The decision wasn't about replacing you, Kimberly.
It was about supplementing.
The kids' schedules have gotten more demanding. We thought having someone younger with more physical energy would help everyone. Including me? How considerate. My tone made it clear I wasn't buying his rationalization. Tell me, Paul, if you were so concerned about my well-being, why did neither of you ever offer to pay me for the childcare I provided? Or contribute to the cottage upkeep when you used it every summer? He had no answer for that, his gaze dropping to the carpet. I thought as much, I said. The truth is, you and Amanda saw me as a resource to be used, not a person to be valued. And resources that are taken for granted eventually run dry. Paul looked up, his expression pained. Whatever mistakes we've made, please don't punish the twins for them. They love you. They need you in their lives. I have no intention of punishing Lily and Lucas, I said firmly. My relationship with them is separate from my issues with their parents. I'm still their grandmother. That hasn't changed. Then why sell the cottage? You know how much it meant to them. Because it was mine to sell, I replied simply. And because sometimes, Paul, people need to learn that their actions have consequences. That treating someone as disposable might mean losing things they valued. So, this is revenge, he said flatly. I prefer to think of it as a life lesson. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have dinner waiting. Paul moved toward the door, then paused. Amanda wants to talk to you. To apologize properly. She's just struggling with how to do that right now. She has my number. He nodded. Accepting this was as much as he'd get from me today. For what it's worth, Kimberly, I am sorry. For all of it. We took you for granted, and that was wrong. Thank you for saying that, Paul. It means something coming from you. After he left, I returned to my cooling dinner, my appetite diminished by the encounter. Paul's visit had accomplished what he'd intended, making me question my actions, softening my resolve with thoughts of my grandchildren's disappointment. But it had also reinforced my conviction that I'd done the right thing. Neither he nor Amanda had ever acknowledged the value of my time or contribution until it was gone. They'd never consider my feelings when making decisions that affected me. Why should I have considered theirs when selling my property? The next morning, I had just returned from my water aerobics class when my phone rang. Amanda's number. I answered, curious what approach she would take after sending Paul as her advance team.
Mom?
Her voice sounded small, almost childlike.
Can we talk?
In person? I suppose we should. I agreed, not making it easy for her. Could I come over this afternoon? Around 2. That would be fine. Thank you, she said, adding after a pause. I really am sorry, Mom. About everything. We'll talk this afternoon, Amanda. I spent the intervening hours preparing myself emotionally for the conversation. Amanda was my only child, and despite our current conflict, I loved her deeply. But love didn't mean accepting disrespect or mistreatment. It didn't mean being a doormat. Sometimes love meant establishing boundaries, even when doing so was painful for everyone involved. At precisely 2 o'clock, Amanda arrived. She looked uncharacteristically disheveled, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her eyes red-rimmed from crying. Gone was the polished executive. In her place stood a woman who appeared to have been genuinely shaken. We sat in my living room, an untouched tea tray between us. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I didn't understand, Amanda finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't see what I was doing to you. I waited, giving her space to continue. When I hired Brittany, I genuinely thought I was helping you, that you'd be relieved not to have the daily responsibility of the twins. She looked up, meeting my eyes. But that wasn't true, was it? You loved that time with them. It wasn't a burden to you at all. No, I confirmed. It was the joy of my retirement, my purpose after your father died.
She winced at that.
And I took it away,
Just like that.
without really considering what it meant to you.
Yes.
You did. I've been thinking about everything since you sold the cottage. About how we've treated you these past years. How much we've taken from you without giving back. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. You were right about all of it, Mom.
We used you.
We treated you like you were disposable once you weren't convenient anymore. I felt a tightness in my throat at her admission. It was one thing to know these truths myself. It was another to hear Amanda acknowledge them. The cottage was such a shock, she continued. I never imagined you'd sell it. It didn't even occur to me that you could, that it was yours alone to decide about. That's how entitled I'd become. I thought of it as our family property, even though we never contributed a cent to its upkeep. Your father put it in my name deliberately, I told her. He wanted me to have something that was exclusively mine. Something I controlled completely. Dad was smarter than I gave him credit for, she said with a sad smile. He must have seen something in me even then, some tendency to take what was yours. I softened slightly at her self-awareness. Your father loved you, Amanda. We both do. But love doesn't mean allowing yourself to be taken for granted. I know that now. She reached for her purse and pulled out an envelope. This won't fix everything, but I want you to have it. It's a check, an attempt to compensate you for the years of childcare you provided. Paul and I calculated what a full-time nanny would have cost us for 10 years, plus interest. I took the envelope, but didn't open it. This isn't about money, Amanda. I know.
It's about respect.
About valuing you as a person, not just for what you could do for us. Her eyes filled with tears. The money is just a small step, a concrete way to acknowledge the debt we owe you. There's no way to fully repay what you've given us. For the first time since this conflict began, I felt a glimmer of hope for reconciliation. Not an easy or immediate one, but a possible path forward. The cottage is gone, I said gently. I can't undo that sale. I know, Amanda nodded. And maybe that's for the best. It's forced me to face some hard truths about myself that I might have continued to ignore otherwise. We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering ground we should have traversed years ago. About her feelings of guilt for not being more present during her father's illness. About my grief and loneliness after Robert died. About how caring for the twins had given me purpose when I needed it most. I wasn't just helping you by watching them, I explained. They were helping me too, giving me a reason to get up every morning, to stay engaged with life when it would have been easier to retreat into my grief. I never thought of it that way, Amanda admitted. I was so focused on my career, on proving I could have it all, the executive position, the perfect family, that I didn't see what was really happening. And now, with Brittany hired, I asked, the question hanging between us. Amanda sighed. We've put her on hold, actually. The twins have been asking for you constantly. They don't understand why Grandma suddenly disappeared from their lives. I didn't disappear by choice, I reminded her. I know. That was my doing. She leaned forward, her expression earnest. Mom, I know I've handled this all wrong, and I've hurt you deeply. The cottage is sold, and I accept that. But please don't cut yourself off from Lily and Lucas. They need their grandmother. The mention of my grandchildren softened my resolve further. I never intended to cut myself off from them, but our relationship will have to be different now. I won't be their daily caregiver anymore. What if, Amanda suggested carefully, instead of daily childcare, we moved to a more traditional grandparent role? Sunday dinners every week. Maybe one afternoon a week where you take them for a special outing, whatever you feel up to. And, of course, holidays and special occasions. It was a reasonable proposal, one that acknowledged the need for change while preserving the most important aspects of my relationship with the twins. I think that could work, I said cautiously. But I need you to understand something, Amanda. I won't be taken for granted again. If I agree to this new arrangement, you need to respect my time and energy, to see me as a person with my own life, not just a resource for your family. I promise, she said, and for the first time in years, I believed her. This whole experience has been a wake-up call. I don't want to be the kind of daughter who only values her mother for what she can provide. We talked through the practical aspects of our new relationship, Sunday dinners at her house, Wednesday afternoon outings with the twins, clear communication about expectations and boundaries. It wasn't a complete resolution, but it was a beginning. As Amanda prepared to leave, she paused at the door. What will you do now, Mom? With the cottage money, I mean. I smiled, a plan already forming in my mind. I think it's time I had some adventures of my own. Your father and I always talked about traveling once we retired, but then he got sick. You should do it, Amanda said with unexpected enthusiasm. Travel, I mean. Dad would want that. Perhaps I will, I replied. But first, I need to get reacquainted with myself. Figure out who Kimberly Barker is when she's not being defined by someone else's needs. After Amanda left, I sat in my quiet living room, processing our conversation. The anger that had driven me to sell Blue Crest Cottage had subsided, replaced by a cautious optimism about rebuilding my relationship with my daughter on more equal footing. The cottage was gone, but perhaps something more valuable had taken its place: mutual respect. The months following my dramatic decision brought changes I couldn't have anticipated. Some were painful. The first time I saw the twins after selling the cottage, they peppered me with confused questions about why they couldn't go to the lake house anymore. Their innocent hurt was the hardest consequence to bear. But other changes were unexpectedly positive. True to her word, Amanda established our new routine of Sunday dinners and Wednesday outings. At first, these gatherings were awkward, the tension of our conflict still lingering beneath polite conversation. But gradually something shifted. Without the daily childcare logistics dominating our interactions, Amanda and I began to relate to each other differently, more as two adult women than as mother and perpetual caretaker. Our Sunday dinners evolved from obligatory family time to genuinely enjoyable evenings. Amanda, I discovered, had developed into an excellent cook when given the chance to focus on it. The twins delighted in showing me their school projects and activities without the rush of a weekday schedule. Even Paul, who had always been somewhat formal with me, seemed to relax into a more authentic relationship. As for the Wednesday outings with my grandchildren, these became precious highlights in my week. Freed from the responsibility of daily care, I found I had more energy and patience for special adventures. We visited museums, went berry picking, attended children's theater performances. I taught Lily to knit and helped Lucas build model airplanes, quieter activities that suited my pace but still fostered meaningful connection. You seem different, Grandma, Lily observed one Wednesday as we walked through the botanical gardens. More happy. Out of the mouths of babes. She was right, though I hadn't fully recognized it myself until she named it. I was happier. The resentment I'd carried for years had lifted, and in its place was a growing sense of possibility. The proceeds from the cottage sale sat in my account, representing not just financial security, but freedom. Freedom to make choices based on my own desires rather than others' needs. Freedom to explore who I might become in this third act of my life. 3 months after selling Blue Crest Cottage, I made my first significant decision about those funds. I was having coffee with Helen when I mentioned it casually. I bought a condo in the city, I said, watching her eyes widen in surprise. You're moving? What about your house? Keeping it for now, I explained. But I've always loved the energy of downtown, the museums, theaters, restaurants. Robert and I talked about getting a small place there in retirement, but it never happened. So, you'll split your time? That's the plan. The house for gardening and quiet time, the condo for culture and activity. Best of both worlds. Helen smiled knowingly. This is about more than real estate, isn't it? Maybe, I admitted. It's about creating a life that reflects who I am now, not who I've been for everyone else. The condo became my urban sanctuary, a sleek, modern space so different from my suburban ranch home that stepping through its door felt like entering an alternate universe. I filled it with contemporary furniture, bold art, books I'd always meant to read. No clutter, no obligations, no ghosts of past responsibilities. I began taking advantage of city life, attending lectures at the university, joining a writing group, volunteering at the art museum. My calendar filled with activities I deferred for decades while prioritizing others' needs. One Sunday evening, as we cleared the dinner dishes, Amanda commented on the change. You've got more going on socially than I do these days, she noted, a hint of admiration in her voice. Last week it was the symphony, this week a wine tasting. What's next? Actually, I said, surprising myself with the words even as they left my mouth, I'm thinking of taking a trip to Italy. Amanda paused, a stack of plates in her hands. Italy? By yourself? Helen might join for part of it, I said. But yes, mostly by myself. Wow. She continued loading the dishwasher, silent for a moment. That's brave, Mom. I'm not sure I'd have the courage to travel internationally alone. It wouldn't have been my first choice a year ago, I acknowledged. But I'm discovering that there's a certain freedom in doing things on my own terms and my own pace. The words hung between us, carrying the echo of our conflict without reopening old wounds. Amanda nodded slowly, understanding the subtext. Dad would be proud of you, she said quietly. He always said you were stronger than you gave yourself credit for. He was right about many things, I replied, thinking of the cottage deed in my name alone. Robert had seen this moment coming long before either of us could have named it, the moment when I'd need to stand firmly, on my own foundation. 2 weeks later, I found myself on a plane to Rome, the first stamp in my new passport waiting to be inked. Sitting in business class, a splurge I'd never have considered before the cottage sale, I thought about the chain of events that had led me here. Amanda's casual dismissal, my impulsive revenge, the painful confrontations, and gradual reconciliation. Each link necessary to forge the path to this moment, a 63-year-old woman finally claiming her own adventure. Italy was everything I'd dreamed and more. I wandered ancient streets, ate gelato in sun-drenched piazzas, admired art I'd only seen in books. I took cooking classes, drank wine with strangers who became friends, stayed in small villages where English was rarely heard. When Helen joined me for a week in Tuscany, she marveled at my transformation. If someone had told me a year ago that Kim Barker would be navigating Italian train schedules and chatting with locals in broken Italian, I'd have said they were delusional. She laughed as we shared a bottle of Chianti on our villa's terrace. You've completely reinvented yourself. Not completely, I corrected her. I'm still me, just a version of me that was waiting for the chance to emerge. When I returned home after 6 weeks abroad, tanned and rejuvenated, Amanda and the twins greeted me at the airport with homemade signs and eager questions about my adventures. Did you bring us presents? Lucas asked, practical as always. Lucas. That's rude, Amanda scolded, but I just laughed. Of course I did. What kind of grandmother would I be if I didn't bring Italian treasures for my favorite twins? As we drove from the airport, Amanda filled me in on what I'd missed: Lily's dance recital, recorded for me to watch; Lucas's soccer championship, they'd lost, but he'd scored a goal; Paul's promotion at work. And what about you? I asked. How are things at the marketing firm? Amanda hesitated, then admitted, actually, I've scaled back my hours. Went to 4 days a week instead of 5. Really? That's a big change for you. It was time, she said simply. I was missing too much with the kids. And after everything that happened between us, it made me reevaluate my priorities. I reached across the back seat and squeezed her shoulder gently, a peace offering, an acknowledgement of mutual growth. That night, after the twins were asleep and Paul had retired to his home office, Amanda and I sat on her back patio with glasses of wine, catching up properly. There's something I need to tell you, she said, her expression serious. About the cottage. My stomach tightened. Had the new owners demolished it? Transformed it beyond recognition? I wasn't sure I wanted to know. The new owners reached out to me, Amanda continued. They found our names in some old permit paperwork and tracked me down through my firm. What did they want? I asked, curious despite myself. To offer us 2 weeks rental this summer if we're interested. They're only using it for part of the season and they thought the twins might miss it. The gesture caught me off guard, a kindness from strangers that hadn't occurred to me as a possibility. That's unexpected, I managed. I wasn't sure how to respond, Amanda admitted. Part of me wants to accept, to give the kids that continuity. But another part wonders if it would just be reopening a wound we've started to heal. I considered this, weighing the complex emotions attached to Blue Crest Cottage. What would you prefer? Honestly, she looked at me directly. I think I'd rather start a new tradition. Find a different lake, a different cottage. Something that belongs to our future rather than our past. Her answer surprised me, but it felt right. I think that's wise. I've actually been researching options, she continued, excitement creeping into her voice. There's a place about an hour north of Blue Crest, smaller, but right on the water. It's available for a 2-week rental in August. Sounds perfect.
And Mom?
Amanda hesitated, then pushed forward. We want you to join us. Not for the whole time if that's too much, but for as much as you'd like. The kids would love it and so would I. The invitation hung in the air between us, not an obligation or expectation, but a genuine desire for my company. So different from the entitled assumptions of the past. I'd like that, I said softly. Maybe not the full 2 weeks. I have that painting class in the city and my writing group, but perhaps a long weekend at the beginning and end? Amanda nodded, clearly pleased. Perfect. You can help us establish our new traditions, but still have your own life. My own life, I repeated, savoring the phrase. That's what this has all been about, hasn't it? Finding my own life after so many years of living for others. I'm sorry it took something as dramatic as selling the cottage for me to see what I was doing, Amanda said, regret coloring her words. For what it's worth, I think you made the right decision. Not just for yourself, but for all of us. I thought about the cascade of changes that had flowed from that one defiant act. My condo purchase, my travels, Amanda's reduced work schedule, our reimagined family dynamics. The cottage sale, intended as revenge, had instead become a catalyst for transformation. I think I did too, I agreed, though I didn't know it at the time. Grandma, watch me, Lily called from the dock, her voice carrying across the small lake where we'd gathered to celebrate my 64th birthday. She executed a perfect cannonball into the water, sending spray high into the air and drawing cheers from Lucas and Paul, who were already swimming. I waved from the deck of the lakeside cabin Amanda had rented for the weekend, our third such gathering at this new location. It wasn't Blue Crest Cottage, with its decades of memories and familiar comforts. But it had its own charms, and more importantly, it represented our fresh start as a family. Need any help with that? Amanda asked, stepping onto the deck with a tray of lemonade. Nearly finished, I replied, putting the final touches on the birthday cake I was decorating. Just needed a quiet space away from little fingers. Well, it looks amazing, she said, setting down the tray. Though I still think you should have let me order one from the bakery. It's your birthday. You shouldn't be making your own cake. I wanted to, I assured her. Baking relaxes me. And besides, I have plenty of time for it now that I'm not chasing after 7-year-olds every day. Amanda smiled, acknowledging the gentle reference to our past conflict without defensiveness. We had reached a place where we could occasionally touch on those wounds without reopening them, a sign of genuine healing. How is Barcelona? She asked, changing the subject as she helped arrange candles on the cake. You barely had time to unpack before we dragged you out here. Magnificent, I replied, thinking of the sun-drenched city I'd explored the previous week, the latest stamp in my increasingly full passport. The Sagrada Familia alone was worth the trip, though I think Portugal might be next on my list. Mom the Globetrotter, Amanda teased. Who would have thought? Certainly not me, I admitted. Not a year ago. We fell into comfortable silence, watching Paul teach the twins to execute proper dives from the dock. So much had changed in the year since I'd sold Blue Crest Cottage out of hurt and anger. The revenge I'd sought had transformed into something far more valuable. Independence, self-discovery, and paradoxically, stronger family bonds built on mutual respect rather than obligation. The cottage funds had financed not just my travels, but a sense of security I'd never experienced before. I'd established a college fund for the twins, donated to the pancreatic cancer research fund established in Robert's memory, and still had enough to ensure I'd never be financially dependent on anyone. But the greatest change wasn't financial, it was relational. Amanda and I had rebuilt our connection on more balanced ground. She had continued her reduced work schedule, prioritizing family time in a way she never had before. I had continued exploring my new interests while maintaining meaningful involvement with my grandchildren, our Wednesday outings now supplemented by occasional weekends like this one, where we gathered without the weight of expectation or resentment. You know, Amanda said thoughtfully, I was so angry when you sold the cottage. I thought you were being petty and spiteful. I was, I acknowledged with a rueful smile. At least partly. Maybe, she conceded. But you were also standing up for yourself after years of not doing so. And honestly, Mom, it was the wake-up call I needed. I didn't like seeing that side of myself, the entitled daughter who took her mother's time and energy for granted. We both needed a change, I said gently. Me just as much as you. I'd fallen into patterns that weren't healthy for either of us. Well, I like who we've become, Amanda declared, raising her lemonade in a toast. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, I echoed, clinking my glass against hers. And to making sure the past doesn't define our future. Later that evening, as we all gathered around the fire pit roasting marshmallows, I found myself filled with an unexpected contentment. The path that had led us here had been painful at times, but necessary. Like a forest after a fire, new growth had emerged from the ashes of what was destroyed. Blue Crest Cottage was gone from our lives, but the legacy it left behind wasn't one of loss. Instead, it had given us something far more valuable: the chance to rebuild our family on a foundation of mutual respect, clear boundaries, and genuine appreciation. As I watched the firelight dance across the faces of those I loved most in the world, I thought of Robert and what he might make of all this. The cottage he'd insisted on putting in my name alone had indeed become my sanctuary, not in the way either of us had imagined, but in a deeper, more profound sense. By letting it go, I had found my own strength, my own voice, my own path forward. Sometimes the most powerful act of love isn't holding on, but letting go. Not in defeat or surrender, but in the confident knowledge that what truly matters will find its way back to you, transformed into something even more beautiful than before. Thank you for reading The Summer House. If you enjoyed this powerful story about standing up for yourself, setting boundaries, and finding new beginnings later in life, please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more original content that explores complex family dynamics and personal growth. Don't forget to like this video and hit the notification bell so you never miss our weekly stories of triumph, transformation, and sweet revenge. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear about your own experiences with family boundaries and second chances.